This paper is an ongoing research that we started at Ulm University, and it is part of a larger effort with the other member of the research group on periodical studies. I'd like to briefly summarize what the argument is going to be. I'm going to focus on the magazine Tempo, which was a weekly magazine born in 1939, and I've just prepared a simplified version of how Tempo came into existence. It's just a simplified version. In the first paper, it was clear that there were more complex links between different periodicals in different parts of the world. The magazine Omnibus was founded in 1937 by the intellectual Leo Longanesi, and it was the first illustrated news magazine in Italy using the rotogravure printing technique. There were other rotogravure magazines dating back to the second half of the 20s, but they were specialized magazines, especially cinema magazine. Omnibus was shut down by the fascist regime in January 1939. Longanesi tried to continue the experience and discussed the creation of the weekly illustrated news magazine Oggi, which is translated like today, with the publisher Rizzoli. But part of that experience was also used to create its rival Tempo, Time, by publisher Mondadori. The first issue of Oggi and Tempo both came out in June 1939. The layout and graphic design of Tempo was openly inspired by the American news magazine Life, while it could be argued its title was inspired by the other American magazine Time. Life served also as inspiration for the German magazine Signal. Tempo used a complex graphic design to convey a cultural agenda to a large and generic Italian audience. It's the first magazine using predominantly photos and captions to convey its message. Signal was thought as a vehicle for Nazi propaganda, not only in Germany, but also in many other countries. From 1940 to 1945, it was translated into at least 25 other languages. It was distributed not only in countries occupied by Germany or in allied countries such as Italy, Spain, Portugal, but there were also English, Iranian, Russian, Turkish, and so on editions, among others. The publisher of Tempo, Mondadori, and its director, Arnoldo Mondadori, saw a possibility in the internal rivalry between Nazi and fascist regime. So he proposed to the fascist regime a collaboration to publish foreign editions of Tempo to oppose German propaganda. The first foreign edition to be printed was the German edition in October 1940, and between 1940 and 1943, a total of 9 foreign editions were printed: German, Spanish, French, Romanian, Hungarian, Croatian, Greek and Albanian, plus a special Italian from 4 foreigners countries edition. In Italy, Tempo was a weekly magazine. Instead, the foreign editions were fortnightly, distributed every 2 weeks, following the model of Signal. For this paper, I've taken into account 5 of these foreign editions: German, Spanish, French, Hungarian, and Romanian, and I've compared them to the Italian edition. The foreign editions were quite different from each other and from the Italian edition. Articles and photos were mostly the same, although there were some exceptions, with articles and photos used only in some foreign editions, But speaking in general, what changed was the layout of the page and the editorial plan for each edition. Looking at letters and documents preserved at the Mondadori Foundation in Milan, it clearly emerges the constant reference to Signal and its foreign editions in the planning phase of Tempo foreign editions. Mondadori and the fascist regime were almost obsessed with Signal and with what Signal was doing in the other countries. So they search a way to contrast the influence of that magazine over foreign countries. Moreover, it emerges the aim at creating a customized experience for each foreign edition of Tempo. For example, in a document that summarizes the plan for the German edition, it is said that in that edition there will be new articles and huge stories with photos specifically chosen and not present in the Italian edition. It was advised that we should show to our allies the technical and creative skills in graphic design reached by our country, which are not inferior to theirs. And later it states that we should use a better paper quality than that used for the Italian edition, even though it would mean a higher price. And in a letter written when the first number of the German edition first numbers of German edition were already out, the publisher says that in the German Tempo there should be a focus on Italian beauty through the arts and through Italian female and male blondies. Some artistic nude and some seaside beauties, so-called seaside beauties. These are just examples of the ideas that were put into the creation of the foreign editions. The first aim was to oppose the Nazi propaganda present in Signal. The second aim was to disseminate the fascist/Italian way of life. The third aim was to create a customized experience for each foreign edition. The circulation of the foreign edition wasn't without problems. Tempo was mostly distributed to allied countries or countries under the influence of German or Italian military forces. But every different country presented a peculiar challenge. For example, exporting the Spanish edition to Spain when the magazine was entirely written in Spanish was a huge cost. Due to peculiar custom taxation, such that the distribution was interrupted for more than a year between 1941 and 1942 to solve these problems with the Spain authorities. Another example, Greece had some resistance to the idea advocated in the magazine, such that stopped the distribution of the first issue with a pretext until the editor-in-chief of the Greek edition, the Italian editor-in-chief of the Greek edition, was sent to Athens to solve the problem. And I arrived to the cinema section in the magazine. I wish to start with a few examples from the Italian edition. The issue number 4 is one of the very few with a dedicated cover, a rare, if not unique, choice. Initially, the cinema section was organized with a film critic column, text only, and one or more articles on 2 or 3 pages. In the magazine, gossip and colorful news related to actors or actresses were not very frequent. It was a favored didactic approach with articles on upcoming movies or on the behind the scene of the working on the film industry. In the first issues, there were a few photos, but in the later issues, they acquired a more pivotal role. They increase in their number and in their importance in the layout of the pages. To testify to the growing importance of images, here there is an example from issue number 7. The page layout is still in the first phase, but you can perceive the relevance of the captions. The caption, circled in red, creates a sort of narrative among two different images, and it reads, the one eye of the movie camera is more fearsome than the thousands scattered in the stalls. Here you see the director Neufeld comforting a worried ballerina. The first image with the director behind the camera and the second with the director talking to an extra are linked by the caption with words that are particularly self-aware of the importance of the photographic medium. Later on, the number of articles per issue attested on 2, one textual film critics column, and one article with pictures on 2, 3, or sometimes 4 pages. In issue 75, you can see a brief article on a Hollywood romantic comedy, Love Affair. The article is written through the perspective of French film critics, such that the Italian title of the article translates the French title of the American movie, Elle et lui. The brief article reports and comments on what French film critics had written on the film, and the images served as summary for the film itself, with captions explaining the plot. The fact is, the film was not distributed in Italian cinema theaters at the time and could be screened only after the end of the World War II, thus rendering the article the only source of viewing for the Italian audience. In issue 33, there is the first cinema article with the color images. Tempo had at least 4 color pages in each issue, but they were used mostly for arts, especially paintings and sculptures, for scientific articles or for articles on costumes, rarely for cinema. It is significant that the first color article in the cinema section is dedicated to an animated American movie, Pinocchio, although, of course, the source for the animated movie was the Italian novel by Collotti. And to show how different the foreign editions could be from each other, I propose a comparison between the German and French editions regarding covers and side images on the index pages. As a generalization, it's true that on the one hand, the German edition presented mostly covers images linked to the word effort, while side images on the index pages were mostly dedicated to young bodies in an athletic effort, being it dance or athletics. On the other hand, the French edition's covers were mostly dedicated to outdoor beauties and activities, with a prevalence of female close-ups. The side images on the index pages are often dedicated to female beauty linked to outdoor living. I want to stress again that these are not strict rules. There are a few covers of the German edition with close-up of female models and a few covers of the French edition with pictures linked to the war. But looking at the foreign edition as a whole, they were clearly thought with different purposes in mind. In this regard, the Spanish edition was more similar to the French, while Hungarian and Romanian editions were more severe, thus like the German edition. For example, the Hungarian covers were almost always linked to the war. Finally, I would like to present 3 examples, or maybe 2 if I'm running late, of how differently the foreign editions could present the same articles. In the issue 99 of the Italian edition, there was an article written by Amedeo Castellazzi, who was a writer, a cinema writer, an assistant director, but also a behind-the-scene photographer. Here he presents some of his pictures of stars taken on the set of different films. I would like to concentrate on the picture of the actress Alida Valli and its caption on the first page. The caption were written by Castellazzi himself, and he wrote, the possibilities of the camera are not infinite and do have a limit. Therefore, I was able to catch Alida Valli with such indiscretion while she whispers something so close to the ear of her co-worker, but for the life of me, I wasn't able to catch on film the words leaving those lips. Again, you can sense the feeling of self-aware confidence in the photographic medium, but also the prominence of the captions, which assume the same importance, if not more, of the main text. The article in the German edition is on 3 pages. Furthermore, it changes the positioning of the images, their balance, and their framing. It chooses only actresses as object of the photos. There is no more actors. In the first issue of the German edition, texts were in Italian, while a summary and the captions were in German. Later on, all the issues were printed in German only. Anyway, the caption of the same picture of Alida Valli slightly changes its meaning. It says, Alida Valli finds it rather indiscreet that the camera catches her just as she is whispering a few words into her colleague's ear. The caption shifts from first to third person, and all the references to the photographic medium are lost. In the Hungarian edition, some of the pictures used are different, and again, it changes the positioning, the balance, and the framing of most of them. Title and text of the articles were in Hungarian, while captions were bilingual, with both Italian and Hungarian. That's the reason why the caption is still more concise. Alida Valli is betrayed by the indiscreet photo while she whispers something to her co-worker. The second example is from an article on the movie Don Juan by Dino Falconi. The 4-page article in the Italian edition see the prevalence of photos over text. While the text is divided into a main column and 2 separate boxes used to summarize the plot of the movie. The layout of the pages is rather chaotic due to the different sizes of images, length of the captions and text boxes. The French edition is almost an exact replica of the Italian, both for images and text. The Spanish edition follows the same general rules, but on 3 pages instead of 4. In this case, some images are cropped or with different framing in respect to the Italian edition. But the German edition, which was distributed before the French, uses a completely different approach. It is on 3.5 pages, but the images are bigger in respect to the Italian and French editions, and their positioning on the page is more schematic and geometrical. The Hungarian edition is on 3 pages, but it is almost a replica of the German edition. So, just briefly, there was another article I was going to talk about. It's about outdoor shooting. So it's part of the didactic part of the cinema section. You can see in the different edition how the pictures changes the disposition on the positioning on the page and the framing to arrive to the Spanish edition where some different pictures, some different images were used. As you've seen from the examples, every foreign edition had a different layout and a different editorial policy. The idea was probably to customize the experience for each country. The main articles were mostly taken from previous Italian issues with minor revisions, but there were some opinion columns specifically written for the foreign editions. In the cinema section, columnist Micromegas wrote original articles which then circulated in the foreign editions, but not in the Italian one. The images used for the foreign editions were mostly the same as the original Italian issues, with a few exceptions. It was the choice in what images to use, how to distribute them on the page, how to frame them, their captions, and the general layout of the pages for each article that rendered each article different. From 1939 to 1943, the cinema section in Tempo presented Italian along European cinema, mostly German, but also French, Hungarian, and Swedish. But there were also articles on new Hollywood movies, at least until the official entrance of Italy in the war in June 1940, and constant references to classic Hollywood cinema in other articles. And finally, unlike Signal, in which many, if not most, of the articles were about the war effort, Tempo proposed a mixed array of arguments. The war was present, but along more soothing articles. French and Spanish edition were more liberal and presented more images of female beauties in respect to German, Hungarian, and Romanian edition. Okay, so thank you for your attention.